Most people can't settle the debt. About only 81% of people who put in offers couldn't settle their tax debt. There's a bunch of criteria before you can even file the offer. And here's the problem. Most people talk to salespeople at the firm, and that is really problematic because the salesperson knows what your need is. They know what your worry is. They know what your angst are. So what they're doing is they're appealing to your need. They're appealing to your pain. And the reality is they don't know the truth. They've never submitted an offer. And unless you do this a lot and see how IRS reacts to your situation, you can't really build an accurate profile to know whether someone's offer is going to be accepted. Josh, I want to talk to you about two ads that to me actually should be prosecuted for criminal prosecution. The first is the use of the Fresh Start Program. Oh my God, Josh, can you speak about this Fresh Start? Everyone says IRS has a new program called the Fresh Start, the 13-year-old program. Could you tell people about the Fresh Start Program and what it's used for? Clickbait. Can you tell people about it?
If I had a piece of fruit and I put it in the fridge in 2011, would I consider that fresh anymore? Probably not. That's the IRS Fresh Start Program. It was actually the IRS coming up with a marketing campaign, and they came up with the idea, Fresh Start. The idea was simple. We want to make it apparent to all taxpayers that they don't have to file 30 years or 10 years worth of taxes if they haven't filed that long. They only have to file the most recent 6 tax years. So that's where the Fresh Start Program got its name, as an IRS marketing campaign. But then all you have to do is file those taxes, and if you're self-employed, make sure you've got the most current 6 years of estimates paid in.
Yeah, the other one too is that IRS writes off millions and billions of dollars a year. You see that, so it's making you assume that company knows something or it's part of the program. The reality of that is what happens is that IRS writes off that much money because the statute of limitations that we talk about is only 10 years. So the reason IRS writes that off is because the statute of limitations really are expiring. And the other thing, Josh, that bothers me, it just says the tax forgiveness program. The tax forgiveness program is the offer and compromise program. Just so you know, there's no new programs. IRS doesn't come up with anything. There's only one way that you can settle IRS debt, Josh, and it's through what program?
That's the offer and compromise program. And the way you do it is based on your financials. What your financials, your income and your expenses, what you own and what you owe. That is, you own a house, you owe a mortgage, you own a car, you owe a car payment. What that net is on your balance sheet, your assets versus your liabilities, what you own versus what you owe. And then on a profit and loss statement, basically your income for any given month and the amount of expenses that the IRS is going to allow you. Not necessarily every one of your expenses really qualifies to be taken care of as an IRS allowed expense. And these expenses that they allow are abysmally low, right, Mike?
Yeah, Josh, let me say, if someone called you, they haven't filed tax returns in a long time, and they're eligible for the offer and comp. Most of the calls we get, people are self-employed, they haven't filed for years, but we want to get them in the offer and compromise program. Take that candidate that calls us all the time. What would you first say if someone hasn't filed and you pull up the transcript? Tell us that process so people know what that is.
We do things in 2 phases. The first is, let's make sure those first 3 things are true. You're not going through an IRS audit. You're not going through bankruptcy. That third one, you're not current with the IRS. You haven't filed the last 6 years of returns. That's where we start out. And we make sure that we get all your taxes filed so that you're compliant with the code and you qualify for that ultra famous IRS Fresh Start Program. You've got the last 6 years of returns filed. Once you've taken care of that, the most recent 3 years, we can e-file for 25, 24, and 23. But when you're looking at 22, 21, and 20, those can't be e-filed anymore. The IRS only allows the current tax year and 2 prior. So those have to be paper filed. And the IRS's publicity says they will be processed within 16 weeks. But the reality I see is we're looking at a 6-month period, because in 2025, the IRS population dropped 35%. There are that many fewer people working there, so they're processing cases a lot slower. So you want to get an offer on compromise, you have to get those filed and submitted and accepted. And like Mike said, that 150 date or that TC 300 date, the date they entered into the system is what matters. So if it's not entered into the system, but you mailed it in, too bad, so sad, you got to sit and wait. And then you can't even move forward on submitting an offer on compromise or any other alternative to collections like an installment agreement or a partial pay installment agreement or currently not collectible. It just isn't in the cards until it's in the system.
Yeah, so big thing is don't fall for clickbait. You know, when you have an IRS problem, everyone thinks the fail safe is, well, I can avoid penalties and interest and I can settle my debt. Those are the two biggest fallacies that are out there. Most people can't settle the debt. About only 81% of people who put in offers couldn't settle their tax debt. There's no way they can. And most people, though, there's a bunch of criteria before you can even file the offer. And here's the problem. Most people talk to salespeople, right, Josh, at the firm? And that's really problematic because the salesperson knows what your need is. They know what your worry is. They know what your angst are. So what they're doing is they're appealing to your need. They're appealing to your pain. And the reality is they're not, first of all, they don't know the truth. They've never submitted an offer. And unless you do this a lot and see how IRS reacts to your situation, you can't really build an accurate profile to know whether someone's offer is going to be accepted. And like I said, most people, as Josh knows, are self-employed. And you've got to have people know how to scrub the financial statements down a little and put you in the best light. Correct, Josh?
Exactly. Now, let's talk about that abatement of penalties. I want to touch on that lightly because there are two types of penalties that will never get abated. So if we're working with somebody and they haven't filed for the last 6 years and they want to have penalties abated, well, too bad, so sad. The IRS will not abate a penalty that is for failure to file or failure to pay. And those are the two penalties that are right next to each other in the code that get hit you if you haven't filed your taxes currently, you filed an extension and you didn't file it by the extension due date, or you didn't file an extension and you didn't file it at all. Those penalties never go away. So when you're looking at abating penalties, there are special criteria and only certain penalties that can be abated.
Yeah, and here's the thing. You know, we do these videos and we do them, first of all, obviously for business. Let's face it. That's what we do. I'm not here wasting my time. But there's a second reason, and that's that you don't get ripped off. You have no idea how many calls Josh and I get from people who have just been ripped off. Optima Taxes company. Oh my God. Most of my companies come from Alleviate Tax. These are the personal calls that I get. But there's a bunch of them. They're not alone, and they mean well, but they talk to salespeople who overpromise. They get psyched up. They get commissions, and the bottom line, the back office can't do the work. When you are going ahead to want any IRS work done, you hire a person. You never hire a firm. The firm ain't doing your work. A person's doing your work. So you always want to speak to the person that's assigned your case, you're doing the work, and you talk to that person. Because now that person, if they're going to file a power of attorney, your hook, if they don't do what they say or they lie to you, you pull that hook and you say, hey, I'm going to report you to the IRS because you did not perform what you said. So you need to keep that person and that firm available on the hook to go ahead, Josh, don't you think? What do you think?
And if we find me on my website, you're going to find out that I'm boots on the ground. And if you find Mike on his website, you'll find out he's boots on the ground. Mike answers his own phone. I answer my own phone. We don't have an answering service, and we want to help people take care of their tax debt with the IRS in the best possible way. So they owe the IRS, but they pay the least amount possible to get out of IRS tax debt. Possibly not pay any money at all. I've had several people who qualify for currently not collectible. But the thing is, you need to be current. You can't be going through bankruptcy, and you can't be going through an IRS audit. And being current means you have to have the last 6 months of your estimated payments paid. So If you have any questions, reach out to Mike. If you have any questions, reach out to me on my website, besttaxpro.com, and I'll be sure to help you.